Lovely to see you. You're just a little bit fuzzy.
Am
Is
I?
that because you're on Sark
Yeah, I think. Um,
in many
so
ways?
yeah, it's my fuzzy face. Um, it's actually because the program that we're using uploads as it's going along,
Right,
so it can
picking
look
up some
like the
bandwidth.
quality's bad, but actually when
Mm-hmm.
you watch it back, it will be
Mm,
crystal clear. So I can see you crystal clear.
yeah,
Um, but so the main thing is when we stop talking, to not switch your computer off. It will tell you when the upload is
got you.
completed, and it can take quite a while after it's finished for it to
Yes,
complete.
I've had that before,
Cool.
and they didn't tell me that.
Ah, then you shut it down.
And then they had a little problem, but they managed to do it. But I'm aware of that kind of
Yeah, yeah. So
uploading
yeah, are you
issue.
in
But
France at the moment?
no, I'm not. I'm in Devon.
Are you? What are you doing in
Yes,
Devon?
I'm staying with a friend who's been very ill, and just keeping him company and making some food, and I'm writing. I'm using his pad as a writing retreat, so it's been pretty
Oh,
cool. And also,
that's
it's just
nice.
really nice to hang out with them.
Yeah, that's nice of you.
But
Well,
you
okay.
know, anyway,
Um,
yeah,
it's not. Yeah, it's not easy at the same time.
no,
Is
it's
he
not
okay? Is he
exactly.
going to be okay, or is it
Yes, he is.
okay?
He is, but he's been through a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Duff.
and will be for a little while longer. But yes, I think it's going to be okay.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. Yay, excellent. We're lucky to
I
have
think
you.
you might have met him at some point, but we'll talk about that later. But
Okay.
you probably have met him. So nice to see
Excellent. So
you.
welcome, Molly. It's lovely to have you
Thank
here.
you. So lovely
So
to be here.
I'd like to begin first of all to just explain a little bit of how we know each other. Do you want to describe how I know you?
Yeah. Well, gosh, that was a long time ago,
It was
wasn't it?
ages ago now. It was such a long time ago. I think it was oh God. Trying to
You were
think.
just a
I was
wee young thing.
27, I think. I
You
was
still are
27.
really, but yeah. Yeah, it was to do with Kentwell and Kieran
Yeah, your
and
son.
my son and that connection from
Yeah,
Kentwell and reenactment and and yeah, mutual friends, and then you came
I
to
came to
where I was
Shrub.
living, to Shrub,
Yeah,
and then you also got introduced to Jonathan
Jonathan
and
Kay.
the Fools, and
Yes.
yeah, and the Fools and all of that. So yeah, but that was a little bit later on, perhaps. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it
so
wasn't too much later. I think
no.
talk a little bit about Shrub Farm, what Shrub was all about,
Oh,
and
right. Well, Shrub is a community, an intentional community, and we lived there for 20 years or something like that. And we were really into well, we were at that time very into communal living. It seemed, and does continue to seem like a very good idea. And it was something that was really important to us. We'd lived on the road, and I suppose actually we lived on the road by ourselves, and we travelled by ourselves, and then eventually, you get to know the community that's on the road. Amazingly enough, and we're going back a long, long time. And Finn, my eldest, is now 45. He was a
Mhm.
wee tiny baby, and of course you're travelling with no mobile phones.
Mm.
There's nothing. So it's word of mouth and just, serendipity and synchronicity, you could say, that we actually, managed to meet up with people and connect. But there was a good community on the road, and that was in Europe. And then when we came back, we were introduced to a community in Suffolk, Kiln Farm, that was associated with an environmental charity, planting trees in the desert, maybe just a little bit mad, but it was a great community, and a lot of the people we met traveling were also there.
Mm.
So we had all those connections, and that kind of folded for various reasons. I think the guy, Sir John Agnew, who owned it, he wanted it was up for sale, and
Mhm.
we all had to move on. So Tim and I, my husband, we searched out other communities because we enjoyed that way of living.
Mhm.
We were young and foolish, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And
Best
and
way to be.
we searched we searched out, and we went all over the place in our truck, back in the truck again with our kids. By that time we got 3 kids, and we really sought this kind of lifestyle of intentional communal living.
Mm,
And anyway, to cut a long story short, we ended up back in East Anglia at Shrub Farm. And
mm,
that was the community we arrived at that was desperate for some people, because there was only just very, very few people there. And we
mm,
stayed there for that length of time and brought the kids up there and really enjoyed it. But it had
mm,
its trials as well, obviously, communal living does. But I don't regret any of it. I loved it.
mm.
And I probably wouldn't do it in the same way again.
No,
But I
no.
learned a lot.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
learned a lot about myself, a lot about people, about connection, relationships, negotiation.
Mm.
So yeah, and
I
then I
learnt a
met
lot
you. I
through
met you
watching
there.
you. I learnt loads from observing you
Mhm.
guys and the kind of pressures and stuff. I think the main thing I realised from visiting Shrub and visiting you lot was that it's not an island. Like your
Mm.
communal living is still within a community that still
Mm.
exists within a wider stretching
Yeah.
out community that either agrees or doesn't agree with what you're doing and has its own
Mhm.
views on stuff. And that was something I'd never really considered before, because I think when you think about doing these things, it's this idolized
Mm.
idea of, oh, I'm going to just
Yes.
run away from it all and I'm going to go live in this little bubble
Yes.
where you're in
And I
a,
think those, I suppose there are, it's politics.
yeah.
And I think it does exist. I mean, I wasn't so aware of it in the environmental charity community.
Mm,
Maybe I was oblivious. Maybe I just didn't know it was going on. But I don't think it was as much as it was in the Norfolk community,
mm,
that had a political dynamic that was um, challenging,
mm, yeah.
uh, to say the least. But I don't really want to go into that
I
right
think
now. But it was,
just
yeah,
from what you just
interesting.
said with the kiln one, is that
Hmm.
there was someone in charge. And that's the thing that works really well at Kentwell, is that although we exist in this very communal way because we're not Patrick and therefore we're all equal who aren't Patrick,
Yeah.
there is still
Hmm.
Patrick
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
Patrick
Yeah.
owns it. So
Uh-huh.
it kind
Uh-huh.
of has a bit of a stop
Yeah.
gap between the community of Long Melford and Sudbury and
Yeah.
Suffolk and him and his land, and he
Hmm.
chooses to do what he wants with it, which kind of gives a bit of a blocker.
Absolutely. Ultimately, it's his
Yeah,
call, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I get you. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
So talk about what you do, because one of my favourite moments in my life, and it was a real pivotal key moment, was sitting at the table with you and Gail.
Mm.
And I feel like there was someone else there, but there was definitely you and Gail. I feel like there
Yeah.
was another woman there, and I can't
Me
remember who it was.
too.
And we had a
Uh,
really
yeah.
profound conversation, and it was the first time that I'd had that kind of conversation with women from such varied generational gaps,
Hmm.
and just felt like I think it was, I felt the winds of sisterhood swoop around me, and I think
Yeah.
it was the first time that I'd really experienced
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
and it felt like an honor to be there and be part of that, and I just
Hmm.
got the wisdom and the power, just the strength and the power
Hmm.
of sisterhood, and was like,
Hmm.
wow, okay, I can see why they had to separate us because we're formidable. And that was the first time I really got it. Maybe it was Ellie. Maybe it was Ellie, but I do remember.
Ellie. It might have been. It
Yeah,
might
it
have
might have
been
been
my
Ellie.
daughter Ellie.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. I mean, actually, memory, logic, because of knowing myself,
Mm,
it would be about women. It would be
mm-hmm,
about the female experience in this world. Um, I can't really remember the detail of that conversation, but it was something that was really always, I'm always willing and eager to talk about things that are important, not only to me, but to to society. I
mm,
believe, anyway, that, certain subjects are really important, that we explore these subjects. Um, I have to say that at Kiln Farm, I had probably the kind of experience you had sitting
mm,
at that table. I probably had it then when I was younger
mm-hmm,
in Kiln Farm, the first community, where we had a lot of women there, and we joined together. There was a sisterhood. definitely the sisterhood. And we talked about women's stuff, and we sang together, and we did Tai Chi, and we danced, and it was a real connection, and incredibly powerful and important. And so, yeah, that I think, I connect with what you felt, because that's my
so
experience
powerful.
back then. But I can't remember the detail of what we talked
No,
about.
I can't.
But we're woman stuff
It
and
was, yeah. It
connection.
was about motherhood, and I think
Yeah, motherhood.
it was to do
Yeah,
with Gail and her boys, and
yeah,
yeah, it was just motherhood and women's
motherhood,
things we were talking
women's
about.
things,
But
women's
yeah,
stuff,
women's things.
which is what I do.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
my
So talk
job.
about what you do.
That's my job.
Yeah.
And my women things, I'm a midwife.
Yes.
I'm a midwife. So I I love it, and I feel that it's. I mean, I'm a nurse as well. I was a nurse. I always knew that I was going to be a nurse from the moment I was born, pretty much. I was a teeny weensy wee thing, and I would have nurses' uniforms as my Christmas present. Be delighted, and I couldn't wait to leave school and get into nursing college and become a nurse. And it was the happiest times of my life was doing that, and felt very fulfilled and very comfortable with that. But then after I became a nurse, I did lots of other things in my life, and which is good because you live and you learn through that, after those experiences on the road, having babies, and so forth. And then there came a time after being on the road for 7 years and having not long had my second baby in my truck in the Pyrenees, in the foothills of the Pyrenees,
Wow.
that I felt like I wanted to come back to the UK and learn more and study and maybe go back into nursing, or well, what was that going to be? What did that look like? Was I going to go back into nursing and do what? And I felt I was really drawn to those transformative periods, events in our lives, which is birth and death. And which one would I go for? I was going to go for the seeing people out and honouring that and respecting that and doing that as lovingly and respectfully and humanely as possible, or would I attend birth and help that to assist women in that experience to protect them from some of the what can I say? It's difficult. Birth
Atrocities.
is medicalized and it's so difficult, and
Yeah.
I wanted to be there to protect them and help them.
Yeah.
So anyway, I chose birth, and I became a midwife, and I so I had my own experiences of birth. My first baby, Finn, in Shetland, and I had a very difficult birth. Shouldn't have. It shouldn't have been difficult. I was a very fit, healthy woman. It should not have been difficult. I wanted to have a home birth. It never crossed my mind to go to hospital, but I was coerced, and I was quite young. I was 22 when I was pregnant, 23 when I actually had him. And the GP basically said, "Oh, you'll not walk through the doors of this surgery again if you choose to have a home birth, and I won't send a midwife to you." It was like, and you could bleed to death. Oh,
Wow.
and as a nurse, you should know that. I was like, what? Hang on a minute. Oh, and I thought, if you really want me to go to hospital, I'll go to hospital, because I didn't really think too much about it. But home was absolutely my first choice. But anyway, ended up in hospital. He was back to back, which is for me. I don't want to go into that because I could go into it in detail, but I'm not going to, not right this second. But anyway, he was back to back, which was not suitable for me. And now, had I been at home, I could have been up and mobile and moving around, and he probably would have turned, and I would have looked after myself. I would have eaten and drunk and followed my own body's needs. And I'm sure I would have had, I'm pretty damn sure that I would have had a wonderful birth. As it was, I was on my back, and it was very medicalized, and I wasn't allowed to move, and it made it really difficult. So I wanted to know why. And then And then I had Ellie in the south of France, and then Kieran in the community in Suffolk. And these were painless births. I thought, wow, why? Why does that happen? The same person. Why? And I want to know it. So I went into midwifery with the question, why? Leading my investigation, what's going on, what's happening. And 25 years later, here I am teaching what I found. It's what I found out. And I will absolutely say this is my life's work. This is the culmination of having worked 25 years in the NHS in an institution, knowing that that is not the best place to have your baby. It is not the safest place to have your baby. Having that in every cell of my body was quite challenging for me to be working in that. But my goodness, it gave me a lot of information that I've got now. So I'm grateful for it. I would have probably been an independent midwife. I almost went there, had an opportunity, was given, handed on a plate, someone, a lovely independent midwife who was giving her caseload up and giving up. She was going to go to Africa and work in Africa. And she said, here you are, Molly, here's my equipment, here's my caseload. And I was like, oh my God, I want that so much. But I was the main wage earner, and it felt a little unnerving to give up that reliability, that consistency of money coming every month, knowing that was happening. And I at the time in our situation, I decided I wasn't going to give that up. I would remain in the NHS. And as I say, I learned a lot, and I'm actually grateful that I did that.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think that there's something really important about making change from within. There was quite a few of us in Brighton that collectively agreed to do that. And people went off and became teachers and journalists and joined the enemy in their minds so that they could, be the change that they wanted to see. So I think there's something really useful about that.
Very, very useful.
Yeah.
And I feel very strongly that what I've gained, what I gained kudos, you could say, by being in the system, working there with my colleagues, who I don't see as the enemy. I see the system as the enemy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not the individuals, not the professions. Midwives and doctors, obstetricians are amazing, and but the system and the models of care are inappropriate, and there's no balance, and that's the issue. So that's given me, people listen to me because they know that I've been there, and I understand what they're going through, which I do inside out. So that's been a really very helpful in changing the narrative, which is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. And talk a little bit about that. I think it'll probably come out in the cards, because the cards always seem to to do that. But you're like, I was so chuffed when I went and did the birth doulaing course, and you were one of the people that they mentioned. Like, you are a bit of a midwife celebrity. And when Grace, my friend here in Guernsey, was training to be a midwife, and I said I knew you, she was like, "Oh my God," and was really excited. By the way, she's pregnant. She's having a baby.
Is she?
Yeah.
Oh, how lovely.
Yeah, so she's come back and she's in Guernsey for the moment. But yeah, she's
right. Do tell her to get in touch.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, we'll do.
Yeah.
I should be really chuffed about that.
Yeah, totally. Yes. Well, what I'm doing is really, I suppose, speaking very strongly to midwives, because this is as much about the midwifery profession as it is about the women that we're caring for.
Yeah.
And because that's what we do. Midwife means with women, and we walk with the women. We attend and serve them. And so this is about us together as a profession doing the best for them with high quality information and practice. Now, we're not doing that at the minute. And the problem with that is that most of us work where the women give birth, which is in the biomedical model or the technocratic model. And that's obstetric led. Now, we are midwives. We have a very different philosophy. I'm I'm speaking a lot about that, but what I'm doing is introducing a new concept, which is biomechanics. And I'm using that word quite loosely because if you're a purist and you're looking at biomechanics, say you're a mechanical engineer, then it's all about forces and pressures and angles and vectors and so forth. But I'm just using some of the principles there under the umbrella of biomechanics. And I've done that deliberately because I want to bring emphasis and seriousness to the element of birth that has been neglected, and that is the mechanical element. And the mechanical element of birth is what we're talking about here, is the baby making the journey through the pelvis. Now, we don't know much about that, Jolie. Can you believe it? We actually, midwives and doctors don't know a lot about that, and that's appalling. So if we don't know a lot about it, it means that gap in our knowledge it does have an impact on how we help women when they're having difficulty with the mechanical aspect of birth. So that's what I talk about. That's what I teach. I know how to recognize a mechanical issue that's complicating the birth process. Many of the solutions are down to and this is how it should be, to the woman herself finding that solution through instinctive movement. Easy said, but very difficult to have that. Actually, I just dipped in to the post. You sent me a wee link to the previous podcast with Heather.
With Heather. Yeah.
And I haven't listened to the whole thing, but I dipped in just before we came on. And she and yourself were talking about connection. And this is the problem, that we're not connecting. In our modern lifestyles, we're not connecting. We're not connecting with our own bodies, with our own psyches, with ourselves. We're on the phone, we're doing other things, we're being distracted completely. So actually saying the ultimate solution is the woman herself is great and right and proper, but how does she do that? Moving instinctively means that you require belief and confidence in your own ability to give birth, connection with your body to understand what it is you need to do instinctively, and also you need the possibility of movement, which you don't get in the biomedical model. So this is a challenge, just that in itself. So this is a big subject with lots of layers.
Because most women probably don't trust their bodies and don't feel very connected
and the media,
to them.
Exactly. And the narrative in the media tells you birth is dangerous, you could die, this is all terrible, it's really risky. So of course they're not. They're not. They're
I asked
scared.
my mum about her birth experience with me, and she said, "Oh yeah, I didn't know that there was any issues with giving birth, and so I just gave birth."
Yeah, exactly. And that's the same way
she was 21 and she was in hospital, but she didn't know that there was any issue, so she just did it.
Yeah. and exactly. And had Finn not been back to back, I probably would have been fine. I would have just done it. But the fact was, he was back to back, which in itself is not necessarily an issue unless it creates problems for that mother in the sense of exhaustion, extreme pain, and so forth. I didn't want any medication, and it was really pushed upon me to have that. And I was doing some yoga breathing, and I was really getting into a rhythm, but I was on my back, and I shouldn't have been on my back, like on a trolley with big bright lights. This is not supporting physiology.
I know, totally. You think about a cat trying to do that. Like if a cat's giving birth, you give it a box and a cupboard and you let it do its thing. Whereas we put our legs in stirrups and put a great big torch on us and go, right, now there's going to be loads of people standing around you.
Exactly. You would not treat animals in this way.
You wouldn't be able to go for a poo in that way. And you're expected to squeeze something bigger out.
Make love and have an orgasm. And, how would you do that with everybody looking at you and a bright light on you?
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, totally.
So the midwifery philosophy is one that is set in physiology. So in our work as midwives, our work where we sit in our work is in the home birth environment and in midwife-led units. And certain home birth is already set up in that way because it's a women's own home. But in a midwife-led unit, it is deliberately set up to support physiology. So there's low lights, the bed is not dominant, we've got birthing balls, we've got water, we've got massage oils or whatever, movement. And that's because we understand the importance of supporting physiology. Now, most of us do not work in that environment, and most women don't give birth in that environment, so there lies a problem. So you can't separate mechanics from everything else, and I would never want to, because we aren't, some of our parts. We're whole people. We have mind and body, and everything interacts. So this is what I've been writing about today. I'm writing a chapter, and I'm very, very, very happy, very grateful to have been invited to write a chapter in a very popular new edition of a textbook, a midwifery textbook.
Oh wow!
So it's very.
You're so famous. I love it, Molly. You're brilliant.
Well, I'm grateful for that. Also, it's the work. It's the work that's important, Yeah. But I'm grateful that I'm able to, I hope, and I think I'm doing it, to be able to explain and inspire.
Yeah, you're using your
doctors
voice, and it's good. It's
to think again, and let's look at this narrative that exists now. Is it helping? And of course, it's not. So.
And it's no small thing to be taking on the powers that be, because they are very set in their ways, and it is it's an unquestioned edifice.
Yes,
so it isn't,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's
absolutely
not a
right,
thing.
and has been for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right. So we're going to pull a card. So you tell me when to stop.
Okay.
And
okay, stop.
Go that one. So this is swiftness, and this card's actually quite a nice feel to it. It's the the 8 of Wands, so it's got this kind of fiery swiftness. But actually, kind of in terms of midwifery and what you were talking about, swiftness is kind of part of the problem, really, isn't it? Is that everything's expected to be done swiftly.
There you are. That is so true. That's one of the key features in the biomedical model, and in the system that we have is in, out, get in, have the baby, and get out quick. And we will facilitate that in whatever way we can to make that happen, to do that, and there is no care about the process, no care about the unfolding of physiology. It's just bam, bam, bam. Let's get you in and out. We want that bed.
And then on the flip side of that is the swiftness of how it actually can be swift if the hormones are, what's the happy hormone?
Oxytocin.
Yeah, when the oxytocin flow is flowing, then the swiftness, the natural swiftness can occur. But that needs to be, so talk a bit about how you would support that happening and what that journey looks like.
Well, again, I'm going to say that, yes, some births can be swift, but everybody's different. And we have sometimes got a lot of unpacking to do before we allow our hormones to take over and do its thing. But given the right environment, with the right support, the unfolding of birth is usually, you don't hang around. You get on with it. And at home births, you will see that. For midwives, and I've attended hundreds of home births, you don't have hours and hours of the pushing part of labour. That's a rare thing, and usually that'll be a mechanical issue if that is happening, because that's not usual. So yes, absolutely. The building up of it, getting into labour, that's all very much a variable. It depends on the person and their, what's happened to them in their lives, perhaps even. But and as I say, in the right situation, right environment, birth unfolds really pretty easily and comfortably for most women. It can be intense and powerful, don't get me wrong, absolutely. But you're not there for days on end like you are in the hospital. So it's actually, they're trying to push you so quickly, but actually they're increasing the length of time that you're there. It doesn't work like that.
Slow is smooth.
Yeah, exactly. And also, on that note, I just want to bring in different variety of patterns of labour that unfold depending on for example, your shape. I mean, maybe this is going off on a tangent, but I think it's really important. We have always celebrated a gynecoid shaped pelvis, and as the normal, as the usual. And there's a mechanism, because of its shape, this is how the baby will enter in the transverse. It will do a rotation and then come out with looking at the mum's bottom. And that's taught in our training schools, and it's a belief that we have that is the normal mechanism of birth. Now, we have different shapes, actually, and that I won't go into. It has racist implications where that came from. That came from the Caldwell-Malloy pelvic classification from 1933, that they deemed the gynecoid to be optimal. So other shapes of pelvises, for example, the anthropoid has a different shape, and therefore it had different mechanism of birth. The baby will enter and do a different journey through that pelvis because it's a different shape, which also reflects in the pattern of labour. And for these women, second stage is over in a pushing stage is over in the blink of an eye. And it's very different to other patterns.
Wow.
And I love that. I love that we should know about these different patterns.
This is the thing
and
that blows my mind.
Normal, not abnormal.
It blows my mind. Because that's what I was saying in the Heather podcast, is like I really wanted men to listen to it, just to think about and be interested in like women's cycles and cyclical living in general, and just a different way of looking at time and relationship to it, just to be interested in different human experiences and different ways of looking at things. And I feel the same about this with women and women's bodies and just the whole concept. Because when I did the doula training, it blew my mind how incredible our bodies are and how that they do the things that they do. That is just absolutely gobsmacking. But also how we'd been through so much. What you were just saying about the things you need to unpack beforehand. Like there was about 12, I don't know, but between 12 and 20 of us in this group. And at different points, each one of us popped at a different thing, because she was addressing, the different things that obviously women go through that you might be having to deal with, like a coercive partner or an abusive partner that you're trying to support them give birth, but they've got this situation hanging over them. And then just different things. Like one thing was like birth trauma, that came up, and a lot of women suddenly got up and left crying, and then it got to infertility, and that's when I popped, and it was just all the different things that women go through.
Absolutely.
And it was like, God, we go through a lot.
We go through a lot, and the emotional element is so important.
And then we're expected to fully open up and pass a human through us without any hang-ups. When we're all like groomed to hate our bodies and feel disassociated from our bodies, and it's just such a mega journey.
Absolutely. And it's disrespectful and inhumane to expect women to give birth to their newborns, the next generation. It should be revered, it should be respected, and we should be careful for them lovingly. And that's what I hope I can bring, that kind of narrative.
Yeah, so it's not about churning them through the beds. It's
not churning, but the swiftness. You're absolutely right. that's the intention
Yeah.
in the existing model, although it never achieves it. It
No.
actually damages women, harms
Yeah.
them, keeps them there for much longer than they would normally be. If they had
Yeah.
been left to their own devices, they probably would have given birth hours and hours ago.
Yeah. And the effect it then has on those beings that are born and
Oh,
society at
absolutely.
large. You know, they're being
Totally.
robbed of that birthing experience and connection that they could be having with their
Yeah.
mother. And yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much damage that's done through doing that again causes slowness and
Yeah.
all of the alcoholism and drug abuse and stuff that's probably clogging up the system as well is all coming from this place.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
right, let's do the next card.
Mm-hmm.
So you tell me where to stop.
Oh, there. Yeah.
Okay, works. So this one is it's the 3 of discs and it's work, which is what we've been talking about.
Yes.
But this is work, I would say, it's very much to do with the physical world. So where are you going? What are you doing? Like, what are you creating with your work? What's the Molly empire that you're that you're doing?
Oh, yes. I've been doing this on my own, as in physically getting out there and traveling everywhere to talk about this, to teach, to send this message, and that's really important. So I've been to Chile, Santiago in Chile. I've been all over Spain, all over the UK, rural Wales, Ireland, the north of Scotland, Stornoway, Inverness, Glasgow, Edinburgh, London. I will go everywhere, because if somebody wants to hear about this, I'm there. But it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Utterly exhausting. And of course, Tim is really helping massively. He puts together the dates and organisation of the courses and where I would go, and answers all the emails and deals with all that side of it. So it's just been the 2 of us. But because it's grown so much, I need a team. And I want to sit back a little bit because I am tired, and also want to write. And how can I do this more effectively? So I mean, I've known for years that I need to put this on. I do teach online, so I have it. But again, my teaching online entails me sitting at the computer for 8 hours that day, teaching and engaging with 20 odd people online, and the feedback's really great, but it's intense for everybody, including me, and we're all sitting too long, which is sitting is the new smoking. So my pelvis hurts, and it's really hard. So what I want to do is actually get the information into modules. Also, I go off in tangents because I've got that kind of brain, my brain is bursting full of information and everything's related. So I want to create nice little modules that are kind of bite-sized chunks of information that's really relevant to different people's work, because I actually teach yoga teachers, hypnobirthing teachers, midwives, obstetricians, physiotherapists, anybody who has anything to do with pregnancy and birth. So some things will be more relevant to others, and I want to create a batch of modules, and then have that and then maybe just do a webinar to pull things together. So I'm actually working less in that way, but I have to do all that work, and then have a train the trainers program for all the hospitals, and they're asking for that. I have got a lovely, really experienced midwife who's going to be helping me, and she's a lecturer and a very experienced midwife, and she's just wonderful. And so she's been training with me, and she's going to start to teach the practical element. Probably I need a few more that will build, and we'll get out there and train people, train midwives in hospitals to then start training their staff, create a program. So that's all on the cards, and it's really been on the cards for quite some time. I just haven't had the time or headspace or energy to give it due attention and to make it happen. there's several reasons for that. You know, one of it is also, Jolie, when you've got a good formula and it bloody works, it's a wee bit hard to step out of that for fear that what you create next is not going to be as good. Because I've got great feedback on these courses. I mean, incredible feedback. So there's a wee bit of trepidation, but can I keep that? Can I keep essence?
It's the trust of passing it on to others as well, to be able to pass
as
it
well
on.
as that.
Yeah, so teaching people to be able to pass it on, because I see this with Jonathan Kay. You know, he's got this amazing formula, and yes, it is very him-centric. Like he's very special. You're very special. There's something that you've achieved that is so part of who you are and your life experience and all the things that culminate in you. But it's how to pass it on as much as you can. And with Jonathan, it's accepting in a way that it won't show up and look the same in everybody else. So my connection to fooling and I've taken what I learned from him and I utilize it and use it in everything that I do. In this podcast, it is. I'd say this is a foolish podcast. Like, it's in everything that I do, but it doesn't look anything like the way he does it. And so there's an element of having to let it go and trusting it running out into the world, but it ripples and permeates into a myriad of different guises. So it won't all come through the prism of Molly, but there will be other shapes that it takes and forms.
But there is, I mean, I've kind of got, you're absolutely right with all that. And there just gives me an element of that there. You're absolutely correct. But there's also a message that I'm actually seeking to share that actually flips the narrative on its head and creates a new narrative. And that is something I've been doing for 20 odd years, and I have that in every cell of my body, and it's easy for me to do that. But it's not so easy for those who have been entrenched in the system. They start to see it and they go, oh yes, and I've realized actually doing one course opens their mind to that possibility, but they slip back in to the narrative very easily, because that's human nature. And this will take a little bit of time and process to continue to reinforce a new narrative that is much more logical. For example, we tend, midwives and obstetricians tend to blame the baby, say, oh, the baby's in an awkward position. The baby's back to back, or the baby's this or that or the next thing. And that's the cause of the problem. That's not the cause of the problem. That isn't it. And that's a narrative I want to change, to stop saying, oh, she's got a problem because her baby's back to back. We need to stop saying that. The baby might be back to back because actually that's her shape of pelvis. And that's normal for her. That's a possibility. But it's also, for me, it wasn't. It's a consequence of the root cause. So what's the root cause? The baby don't just go into an awkward position just for the sheer hell of it. They're not, we got to think about that. Why is the baby in a suboptimal position? It's because it doesn't have the space to get in to the optimal position for this baby, because the baby's for the mother, because the baby has a blueprint. The baby knows what to do, but it hasn't got the space to do it because of a mechanical issue causing constraint and restriction. That's the root cause. So let's jump over that and go back to the root cause. And stop saying it's the baby's fault. It's the baby and the baby. No, forget about
being
that.
Difficult.
and being difficult, because that's a red herring in a sense, because also it could just be normal. That might be normal. And sometimes the baby's in an optimal, what appears to be an optimal position, but still can't pass through because of constriction. So we're missing an awful lot when we actually narrow it down to this one thing of the baby's position. As I said before, the baby's position in a mechanical issue is a consequence of lack of space. And lack of space can come about because of misalignment, hypertonic pelvic floor, tissues that are tight. And we're just learning all about this. For example, the fascia is so interesting, and it's an intelligent system that covers every part of our body, has fluid running through it, is supple, is strong and flexible, and holds everything together. It gives us our form. And
We're
this
only
is with
talking
thin
about
and
it, aren't we?
frozen.
It's just like a new thing.
We're only just learning about
Yeah.
it. Exactly.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it
So
until a few years ago. Now it's like, oh, everything's fashion.
go,
It's all about fashion.
go. The one.
Yeah.
So we need to catch up with that in the
Yeah.
world of maternity, because the pelvic floor and all the connective tissue that surrounds the uterus and the pelvis and runs through it and inside it and all the rest of it, fascia is integral. So learning more about that. I mean, I don't suggest that I know all these things, but I'm just looking at it from a different lens, and that's what I want us all to do.
And it's being curious, isn't it? Because that's the thing it feels like with the NHS. And
yes.
I mean, I obviously adore the NHS. I mean, now I live
yes, me
somewhere
too.
without the NHS. You know, my teeth need doing. I'm due a smear. I'm like, you know, I'm backing up with issues because I don't have somewhere to go to for free, and we do not realise how lucky we are. Because you end up just not doing it. That's what happens. You just end up not doing it. Yeah, even if you've got the insurance, because you don't want it to then, you know, to make your insurance premiums go up. You just don't bother. And so it's a completely different attitude to health that I've never experienced. I've always just gone to the doctor with anything that's been coming up. I'll just go. And suddenly I'm like, haven't been since 2020. Haven't been to see anyone since 2020. And it's like,
mind you, the NHS, the poor old NHS is struggling, isn't it, with underfunding. But you're absolutely right, and I love the NHS, and I'm grateful for it totally.
But it's not curious. Well, there isn't room for curiosity within it.
Being curious is incredibly important. As I said at the beginning, I went in with that question of why. Why does that happen? And I'm looking at a woman who's got what we call dystocia, and labour dystocia is. If it's translated directly from the Greek, it means difficult labour, difficult birth. And that is what they're struggling with. And why does that occur? There must be a reason for that. And yet we don't understand that. We don't. It's a spectrum of, well, oh God, let's not go there, because I'm going to get furious about that. And I'm going to have to go there now because I've said it.
Yeah,
but it is so daunting to women. Because the definition of labour dystocia includes these words. This is how they describe it: failure to progress, inefficient contractions, inadequate pelvis, insufficient maternal effort. She just didn't try hard enough.
Wow.
So this is,
Wow.
get pissed off because that is outrageous. So this is denigration, of our female bodies and our ability to give birth. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's because, and we don't understand the reason for that. We're just saying, so these are symptoms like, well, the inefficient contractions. Contractions can be affected by a mechanical impact, the misalignment, the feedback mechanism and all of that. It's quite complex. But there is a possibility that that's associated with a mechanical issue. So go to the root cause. Stop blaming the women and saying, oh, you failed. How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you? Oh, God, it could make me scream and cry.
It was like being called a geriatric mother, like that.
Yes, exactly. So this is very cathartic work for me. It's really cathartic because I have worked in that system for 20 odd years, having to deal with that. And, you're working in a team, you don't want to piss everybody off by going on about it, but I'm sure I bloody did. But I tried my best not to. But I'm now able to deal with it, what I know, and the injustices, and I'm very much that kind of midwife and that kind of woman who cares about women.
Yeah, that's why you're great, and I love you.
So
we're going to do one more
love
card.
You too. I love you too.
So one more.
Oh, go back to the other side. Go back.
That way?
Go back. Yeah, there.
There.
Yeah.
What we got? Failure. And this, I feel, got very strong with what you were just talking about. So this
what
is
we
really,
just talked about.
Yeah, seven of discs.
Yeah.
Women feeling like they've failed, and that feeling of failure in the woman world.
Failure. So let's talk about that, because I've got different aspects of that going on in my mind right now. So what we just talked about, women being told they're failing in birth is an abomination. That's a terrible thing. We won't go into it anymore, but that's been said to them, that they have failed. It's written down in their nose.
Oh God! Wow.
They
That's
think
just
that
outrageous.
in a way, and then we reinforce it by writing it down. Oh, why did I have this cesarean section? Because you failed.
Oh
Failure
God,
to
that breaks my heart.
And then we have the women, the midwives, and the midwives are leaving in droves because they are, in essence, failing to do their job. In a sense, through no fault of their own, because they work in a biomedical model, which is not their model. This is not where they should be. Some of them will, because they'll choose complexity and they'll enjoy it and they'll be good at it. And I'm grateful for those midwives. But the majority of the midwives don't want to work in that way. They don't want to be, because you know what, most of the work that they do in that model of care is overseeing obstetric intervention.
Yeah.
That is not midwifery.
No.
And so they feel they fail the women.
Yeah.
And that hurts. We've got moral injury.
Yeah. And it always becomes a medical event, doesn't it? Like it pretty much most of the time will become a medical event, because that's what they're there for. The doctors are there for that,
like
aren't
that.
they? Yeah, exactly.
Because that system is set up for that.
Yeah.
And so the midwives feel that they fail the women and they have moral injury, and they leave.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And it's a tragedy. Terrible. Now the other one, which actually I'm dealing with, actually it's not such a big deal for me right now, but it goes back to my work, and I suppose one of the things that has stopped me from getting on and writing the modules and all the rest of it is a fear of failure, of not being able to translate the excitement and enthusiasm that I feel when I'm there face to face. So I fear failure in that way. And I am quite good at writing, and Tim has been great. He's really helped me to write. I wasn't really good at it when I was doing my degree, years and years ago. And now I'm actually pretty good at it. So I shouldn't fear failure in that way, but I don't know. Sometimes you just get a little overwhelmed by potential, what you might perceive as inadequacies and failings in yourself. So, you're just being human, aren't you? So I suppose I go through that.
Yeah. It's being a perfectionist. There's being a perfectionist, which is a dangerous thing. And
thank you. That's
failing
exactly
is,
what I'm talking about.
I can't remember the exact words. It was such a good quote that I heard the other day, but failing is the next step in your progression. It was something like that, for you to, because I'm writing my 4th book at the moment, and it's nowhere near as good as it is in my head, and they never are. And I'm mortally embarrassed about the other 3 that I've written, I got
you.
Just like, oh
yeah,
God.
I got you. Yeah.
But I'm noticeably better at writing in my 4th book. I've noticeably improved. I'm still not anywhere near as good as I want to be, but each time I'm getting better. And, I've got the next book planned. I'm going to write one for each of the pilgrimages that I've walked.
See, you're brilliant. You don't hesitate to get on and write. Well done, you. Well done, you.
It's painful, but I tell you what, that was one of the main things that Fooling and Jonathan Kay taught me, because that was such a humiliating art form. We died on the stage hundreds and hundreds of times, and I wanted the earth to swallow me up. And I did performances in front of people that I really respected and cared about, and they were the most embarrassing, awful performances of my life. And I didn't die, and no one got hurt, and everything's fine. And I lived to fight another day.
I know.
And it teaches me to just be okay with making a tit of myself. And I find it like doing the government here. Like, that's the most intimidating thing I've ever done. So on Wednesday, I've got to present the budget at our government assembly, because the head of our government's not on island, and I'm sort of in a position of being kind of deputy, which I'm not officially, but the deputy's stepping down at this next assembly, and I'm sort of the next person in line
It
now.
doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me.
But I don't know anything about budgets, and it actually is the most scary thing I've ever done. I find it really intimidating, and it's my poor person head and my rebellious anti-authority person. I'm there in what feels like a courtroom, and it feels like I'm on trial, and just everything about it scares the hell out of me. Even though I know these people really well, and it's all kind of cute and made up. Like there's something about it really cute. It also, it's not, and we're taking it seriously, and we're affecting people's lives. This budget's going to affect our inhabitants' lives, you know. So, and people are going to ask me questions, and I'm not going to have the answers to it. So it's terrifying.
Well, you might.
Well, I'm going to try. I'm going on Wednesday to go and get prepared and go through all the questions that I might be asked and have prepared answers for them. But it's so intimidating, and yet we have to do the things that scare us, because that's what makes life worth living.
We do. And now I enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
It thrills me.
Yes, exactly.
But I've got a birth preparation class that I put online, and actually it's not too bad at all. It's pretty good. It could be better, but my perfectionism has stopped me from making that available. And it's sitting there waiting on the shelf, because I could just make that better. It's like, really? It's been sitting there for ages, and women keep saying, have you got anything? I'm going, yeah, but it's not quite good enough. Yes, it is actually good enough. Probably. Yeah. But anyway, this is a
and the
problem.
thing is in some ways I find that I have to put something out what's the way of saying this? I find it easier to edit something and improve it once I have put it out in the public domain. Because there's something about when you're writing it that you're coming from a different headspace to when you're then witnessing it from the perspective of a reader or a viewer. So I'll be like trying my best and doing this thing and doing this thing. There's a point where you have to flip it. It's a bit like flipping a pancake, and flip it and put it out there. And then
absolutely agree.
The amount of times that I reread a post or something that I've written, and I'm like, oh God, I need to go and edit it quickly. But actually I need to put it out there so that I look at it from the other way round to then edit it. So there's something about, which is difficult with books, because once they're published, they're out there. So there's a kind of how to find that interim.
Absolutely.
It's not quite published, but you give it out to people to read and get their feedback and look at it from.
And I did that, and I sent it to quite a few women, and some gave me their feedback and some didn't. But I have got feedback, and I've taken it on board. And actually, the feedback was pretty damn good. You know, there could be little tweaks here and there, and I've taken that so seriously that it's prevented me from actually putting it out until I get those tweaks done. But actually, that's silly. But still. Anyway, it is there, and I'm actually doing I'm doing a 21-day challenge, Deepak Chopra's Abundance Challenge.
Oh yeah, days. I love that. It's really good.
And I'm enjoying it very much. And it's kind of revisiting what I know and what I've learned in my life. And some of it's also new, and I can see exactly where it's going, and you know, the psychological states and how, and also just doing those explorations into what makes you you, and I've enjoyed that very much, and I'm still doing it at the minute. So
no, it's wonderful. It's wonderful, and it's important, because when you're dynamic and you're giving, you need to make sure you're filling the well back up again. Like that's a really important thing, to look after yourself. So that brings us
lovingly. Sorry, I love one of the things just on the perfection. I think that's, I was just wondering why I brought that up, but it was because in the latest challenge, sorry, and I just want to just say this, one of the challenge the other day there, I had to make a list of things that I wanted to do, but I had to postponed. And I had to write my name, and I forgive myself absolutely and lovingly for not finalising and publishing the online birth preparation course. Anyway, that's helping me get through the perfectionist block. Anyway, that's why I mentioned it.
I love it. No, it's good because I'm actually interviewing a friend of mine called Daisy Rickman, who is a folk singer who's become kind of famous. So she was my cleaner in Brighton, but she's now she was the hot kind of tip in the Guardian at the beginning of this year.
Oh,
And she's just
brilliant.
flown. Like I've seen, you know, she's massive now, and she keeps coming up on my Spotify. Like she keeps just the algorithms are putting her out there and all that kind of thing.
Lovely. Yeah.
And I'm really interested in talking to her about how she feels about how successful she is and how much she's still failing. Because there is no where's the line? You know, at what point do you go, I'm a success? And
I suppose there's a little bit of humility there too, which is not a bad thing.
No, absolutely. But that's a good thing. But I think that probably there's more of a heavy dose of sort of self-beating up, or just like self-criticism, exactly, self-criticism and all of that. So and humility, but from a slightly embarrassed but wanting more, but being embarrassed, you know what I mean? It's that kind of like, when can you say, you know, like the closing of the bone ceremony, that bringing women back in once they've been a portal and opened up. Like I feel I do those ceremonies on myself when I finished a big creative project, like doing a pilgrimage or Boomtown or something. But so I've said to Daisy, I'd like to do that for her and do a ceremony for her to just stop and congratulate herself and thank herself. But that might be something that it might be nice to do for yourself at some point as well. Because when I finish the big thing, the big course or the big output, it's really nice to, like, I bind myself up with a scarf and you
and I have spoken about this before.
We
spoke about it at Glastonbury. And I loved it. I actually do congratulate myself, and I do say you did some good work there. But I like that idea that you've just suggested after the end of a project, just to wrap that up and to wrap yourself up in that. And I think that's important, very important, and I love that, and I haven't forgotten that when we spoke.
It's helped me not feel ill and have emotional crashes at the end of things.
Exactly.
So let's get on to the Chaos Crusade. So what is something that you would suggest to people to do that is a way of kind of breaking the matrix or breaking the mold a little bit? Something simple that people can try and do for the week. Which could be, you were saying something earlier, and I went, "Oh, that's kind of a chaos crusade." What? The abundance meditations, for example. That's something that people could go and do.
I would recommend it because it actually helps you look at how did you get to be the person that you are, and you don't do that alone. What do other people bring? Where are your influences? What were the good bits? What were the bad bits? What do you need to shake off? What do you need to build on? I think it's really therapeutic.
So how do you access it? Explain what it is.
I actually was invited by a friend, or you may have met her, Kate Verley, and Kate is a mind-body balance practitioner of physiotherapy is in her background, and she was doing it, and one of the challenges is to set up another group. No, I haven't done that. I am considering the possibility of doing it, but right now in my life it would be a little step too far because I'm in the midst of stuff. So just doing this was enough. But she generated another group, and so it's come from her. So I think actually you probably could Google it, 21-day abundance challenge of abundance, Deepak Chopra. You'll probably find it.
There are on YouTube the meditations. So there's the daily meditations on YouTube.
Absolutely, that's where I'm getting them from. Well, she's putting a link in from YouTube. And be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself, because we all live in a very challenging world.
And this is it, and this is what it feels like. Exactly, that was exactly what I was about to say. It feels like what you do is you're working so hard and you're doing your best in your. I always say it's like with pixels in a picture, and within your pixel, you're doing everything you possibly can. And there's got to be a point at some point where you're like, do you know what? I need to put my feet up, and I've done as much as I can. I'm going to have a little. And sit
also,
down.
You've got to acknowledge sometimes what you do doesn't work.
Yeah,
and it doesn't help, and you make mistakes. And that's okay too, because that's just being human. And we
Yeah.
all do that. So
Yes.
don't stop beating yourself up about it.
Yeah.
And there's ebbs and flows, believe that, and know
Yeah.
that. Ebbs and flows.
Mm.
One of the meditations, I think it was maybe today, it's very much something I know about as well, but it was a good reminder of the ebbs and flows, and it was a little piece of advice when the shit hits the fan
Mm.
for you and you're in despair, is to know that this too will pass.
Mm.
But even more important is the good times as well, and the successes and the excitement and the great things in life. And when you're feeling fantastic, well, that also will pass, because life is yin, yang, ebbs and flows. That's how it works.
Mm. Yeah.
And just accept that is the nature of life.
Yeah. Love that.
And living.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, I'd say that's a lovely place to end it. Thank you, Molly. That was amazing. I love you.
Thank you. Love you too, darling.
Yay.
Really
And that
do.
was just absolutely spot on. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording.
And
then...
I'll